The divorce papers hit my kitchen table at 6:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours after I'd crawled back into bed next to my husband Malcolm. The sound of that manila envelope slapping against the wood still echoes in my head 3 months later, sitting in this cramped studio apartment that smells like old takeout and broken dreams. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how 1 week of silence destroyed 8 years of marriage, and how I handed Malcolm the ammunition to blow up our entire life. The Grayling family home had always been my sanctuary. Malcolm and I bought the 3-bedroom townhouse in Riverside Heights when Ori was 2, back when we still held hands during grocery shopping and texted each other stupid memes throughout the workday. The beige walls were covered with family photos. Our wedding day, Ari's first steps, Christmas mornings filled with wrapping paper and laughter. But that Tuesday morning in October, those same walls felt like they were closing in on me. Malcolm sat at our kitchen island, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside him. His dark hair was already perfectly styled for another day at Nexus IT Solutions, where he spent more time than he did looking at me. I stood there in my bathrobe, waiting for him to acknowledge my presence, to say good morning, to act like his wife existed. Nothing. "Malcolm," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, "are you planning to speak to me today, or should I just talk to the back of your laptop?" His fingers never stopped typing. "Morning, Zephyra. Running late for the Henderson project meeting." That was it, 4 words and a dismissal wrapped in professional urgency. I felt something cold settle in my chest, the same feeling I'd been carrying for 7 straight days of this treatment. You know what? Forget it. I grabbed my phone and stormed upstairs to get ready for work. In our bedroom, though it felt more like my bedroom lately, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my sister Nina's contact. My fingers flew across the screen. Day 7 of Malcolm pretending I don't exist. I could light myself on fire and he'd ask me to keep it down because he's on a conference call. Nina's response came immediately. "Girl, you deserve better than this. When's the last time he actually looked at you?" I stared at that message, feeling validation wash over me like warm water. Nina was right. When had Malcolm last really seen me? When had he asked about my day, complimented my hair, or initiated any kind of physical contact that wasn't perfunctory? "I honestly can't remember," I typed back. "I'm married to a ghost who pays the mortgage." You need to put yourself first for once, Zeph. Stop waiting for him to remember you exist. As I got dressed for another day at Morrison & Associates, where I managed administrative tasks and pretended my marriage wasn't falling apart, Nina's words echoed in my head. Put myself first. Stop waiting. By the time I came back downstairs, Malcolm was gone. No goodbye, no note, just the lingering smell of his cologne and an empty coffee mug in the sink. Ari sat at the breakfast bar, pushing cereal around her bowl with a confused expression. "Mummy, why doesn't Daddy talk anymore?" she asked, her 7-year-old voice cutting straight through my defenses. "Daddy's just busy with work, sweetheart." The lie tasted bitter. Grown-ups sometimes get stressed and forget to use their words. Like when I'm mad at Emma at school and I don't want to play with her. Something like that. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. At least someone in this house still needed me. After dropping Ari at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened my text messages again. This time, I scrolled past Nina's contact to another name, Rowan Grayling. Malcolm's younger brother had always been the charming one. Where Malcolm was methodical and reserved, Rowan was spontaneous and warm. He worked as a fitness instructor at elite gym downtown, and his social media was full of motivational quotes and shirtless workout videos that got hundreds of likes from women whose names I didn't recognize. We'd always gotten along well at family gatherings. Rowan remembered details about my job, asked about my hobbies, made me laugh with stories about his clients' ridiculous requests. He was everything Malcolm used to be before work, and responsibility turned my husband into a stranger. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, Drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My thumb hovered over Rowan's contact. Was I really going to do this? Cross this line? Hey, weird question, but do you have time to talk today? Having a rough week and could use a friend who actually listens. I hit send before I could change my mind. The response came within minutes. Of course. Want to grab coffee after I'm done with clients? Around 7. My heart rate picked up. Coffee. Innocent enough. Just talking to someone who cared about my feelings, who wouldn't treat me like an interruption in their important schedule. Coffee sounds perfect. Thank you for being there. Always, Zeph. Family takes care of family. Family. Right, that's all this was. The rest of my workday dragged by in a haze of filing reports and answering phones. My coworker Janet asked if I was feeling okay, said I seemed distracted. I brushed her off with something about not sleeping well, but the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about my evening plans. When I got home at 5:30, Malcolm was already there, laptop open at the kitchen table, phone pressed to his ear. He gave me a brief nod, acknowledgement of my existence, how generous, and continued his conversation about server migrations and client requirements. Ari ran to me with a drawing she'd made at after-school care, a picture of our family, but notably, the figure labelled Daddy was much smaller than the rest of us and positioned far to one side of the paper. It's beautiful, baby, I told her, my throat tight. Why don't you show Daddy when he's done with his call? She looked at Malcolm, still deep in technical jargon, and shrugged. He's always on calls. Out of the mouths of babes, I made dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, Ari's favourite, while Malcolm continued working. When I called them to the table, he brought his laptop with him. Really, I said, can't we have one meal without your computer? Client emergency, he muttered, not looking up. The Henderson project is behind schedule. Everything's a client emergency with you lately. Some of us have to work for a living, Zephyra. The words hit like a slap. I work too, had been working since before Ari was born, contributing to our household and raising our daughter while he disappeared into his digital world. Some of us have families for a living too, I shot back. He finally looked at me then, his brown eyes cold and distant. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. I turned my attention to Ari, who was watching us with wide, worried eyes. Tell me about school today, sweetie. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence, broken only by Ari's chatter about her friend Emma and the upcoming Halloween party at school. Malcolm ate mechanically, occasionally typing responses to emails between bites. At 6:45, I excused myself to freshen up. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at my reflection critically. At 32, I was still attractive. My auburn hair fell in waves past my shoulders. My green eyes were bright despite the stress, and my figure had bounced back well after Ari. I deserved to feel appreciated, desired, seen. I'm going out for a bit, I announced, grabbing my purse and keys. Malcolm didn't look up from his screen. Okay. I said I'm going out. I heard you. Don't you want to know where? You're an adult, Zafira. You don't need my permission. The casual dismissal was the final straw. You're right, I don't. I kissed Ari goodbye and headed for the door, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and anticipation. As I pulled out of our driveway, I caught a glimpse of Malcolm through the kitchen window, still hunched over his laptop, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife was about to cross a line they could never uncross. My phone buzzed with a text from Rowan, running a few minutes late but excited to catch up. You sounded like you really needed this. He was right. I did need this. I needed someone to see me, to value my time, to treat me like I mattered. No rush, I texted back. I'm just grateful someone actually wants to spend time with me. As I drove toward downtown, toward Rowan's apartment where we'd agreed to meet before heading out, I told myself this was just two adults having a conversation. Just a sister-in-law seeking comfort from her brother-in-law during a difficult time. Just harmless. Rowan's apartment building was one of those converted warehouses in the trendy part of downtown, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. I'd been there once before, for a housewarming party, when he first moved in 2 years ago. Malcolm and I had attended together then, back when we still did things as a couple. Now I stood alone in the elevator, watching the numbers climb to the 4th floor, my stomach churning with nerves and something else I didn't want to name. Rowan opened the door before I could knock, like he'd been watching for me. He was still in his work clothes, athletic shorts and a fitted t-shirt that showed off the results of his profession, but his smile was warm and concerned. "Zeph, hey, come in." He pulled me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long, his cologne different from Malcolm's, warmer somehow. "You look stressed. Rough day?" "Rough week. Rough month, if I'm being honest." I followed him into the living room, noting how different his space was from our house. Where Malcolm and I had chosen safe, neutral colors and practical furniture, Rowan's apartment was bold and alive. Deep blue walls, leather furniture, art that actually made statements. "Want some wine? I opened a bottle of that Pinot Grigio you liked at Mum's birthday dinner." He remembered my wine preference. When was the last time Malcolm had remembered anything I liked? "That sounds perfect." While Rowan poured drinks in his open kitchen, I settled onto his couch and tried to organize my thoughts. What was I doing here? What did I hope to accomplish? "So," he said, handing me a generous glass of wine and settling beside me. "Tell me what's going on. Your text sounded pretty desperate." "Did it?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. "I guess I am desperate for someone to acknowledge I exist." "Malcolm's still giving you the silent treatment?" I nodded, taking a large sip of wine. 7 days. He speaks to me when absolutely necessary. About Ari, about bills, about practical things. But it's like I'm just another item on his to-do list. Feed cat, pay mortgage, acknowledge wife's existence. Rowan shook his head, his expression genuinely sympathetic. "That's not okay, Zeph. You deserve better than that." "Do I?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just being needy. Maybe this is what marriage looks like after 8 years. Maybe I'm expecting too much. "No." His voice was firm. "I've seen good marriages, and this isn't it. You're not asking for too much by wanting your husband to actually engage with you." The validation felt like a warm blanket. Here was someone who understood, who saw the situation clearly instead of making excuses for Malcolm's behavior. "Nina thinks I should focus on myself more," I said. "Stop waiting for Malcolm to remember he has a wife." "Nina's smart. What would focusing on yourself look like?" I considered the question, swirling wine in my glass. I don't even know anymore. It's been so long since I thought about what I wanted instead of what everyone else needed. "What did you want before? Before marriage and kids and all the responsibilities?" "I wanted to travel. I had this dream of seeing Italy, taking cooking classes in Tuscany." I laughed. "Sounds silly now." "It doesn't sound silly at all. It sounds like you had dreams and interests beyond being Malcolm's wife and Ari's mother." "I still do," I said quietly. I forgot about them somewhere along the way." We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier than any I'd had in months. Rowan asked about my work, remembered details about my boss's ridiculous demands, made me laugh with impressions of his most dramatic gym clients. He listened when I spoke, responded thoughtfully, made me feel like what I had to say mattered. The wine helped too. By the time we finished the bottle, I felt relaxed for the first time in weeks, my usual anxiety replaced by a warm, floating sensation. "I should probably head home," I said, checking my phone. It was almost 9 p.m., and I had no messages from Malcolm. "Of course not." "Should you?" Rowan asked. "Or do you want to stay a little longer? We could order food, watch a movie. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" I looked at him, really looked. His dark hair was tousled, his brown eyes, so similar to Malcolm's but warmer somehow, focused entirely on me. He was offering me something I'd been craving: attention, consideration, the feeling of being wanted. I can't remember, I admitted. Then stay, just for a little while longer. I should have left. I should have thanked him for listening, driven home to my distant husband and complicated life. Instead, I set my phone aside and said, "Okay, but you're buying dinner." He grinned. "Deal." We ordered Thai food and settled in to watch a comedy special on Netflix. Somewhere between the pad Thai and the second bottle of wine, the space between us on the couch disappeared. Our knees touched, then our shoulders. When I laughed at a particularly funny joke, I found myself leaning into him. "You have a beautiful laugh," he said quietly. I'd forgotten what it sounded like. "What do you mean?" "At family dinners lately, you barely smile. It's like you're just going through the motions." The observation hit closer to home than I expected. I guess I haven't had much to smile about. "That's Malcolm's loss." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. "He doesn't know how lucky he is." I should have pulled away, should have made some excuse about the wine, about the late hour, about the fact that he was my husband's brother. Instead, I squeezed his fingers and said, "Sometimes I wonder if he even cares that I'm unhappy." "His loss is someone else's gain," Rowan said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The air in the room shifted, charged with possibility and danger. I looked up at him, saw my own longing reflected in his eyes, and made a choice that would destroy everything. "Rowan." "I know," he whispered. "I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you. I've watched Malcolm take you for granted for months, and it kills me. You have feelings for me." "How could I not? You're incredible, Zeph. You're funny and smart and beautiful, and you deserve someone who sees that every single day." The words I'd been desperate to hear from Malcolm came pouring from his brother's lips instead. I felt tears prick my eyes, relief, gratitude, desire all tangled together. "I can't keep living like this," I whispered, invisible in my own marriage. "Then don't." He cupped my face in his hands. "You deserve to feel wanted." When he kissed me, it was soft at first, tentative, but when I kissed him back, months of loneliness and frustration poured out of me. This was what I'd been missing: passion, attention, the feeling of being desired instead of tolerated. We moved to his bedroom without discussion, carried by momentum and wine and the intoxicating rush of finally being seen. Afterward, lying in his arms while he traced patterns on my shoulder, I felt more alive than I had in years. "I should go," I murmured, but made no move to leave. "Not yet," he said. "Stay a little longer." So I did. We talked in whispers about everything and nothing, about dreams deferred and chances taken. He told me about the women who flirted with him at the gym, how none of them interested him because they weren't me. I told him about the loneliness that had become my constant companion, how I'd started to believe I was unlovable. "You're not unlovable," he said fiercely. "You're perfect. Malcolm's an idiot." By the time I finally left his apartment, it was past midnight. I drove home in a haze of guilt and satisfaction, my body still humming with the memory of his touch. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Malcolm had gone to bed without waiting for me, without even texting to ask where I was. I slipped inside quietly, expecting to find him asleep. Instead, he was sitting in the living room, still dressed, his phone in his hands, and an expression I couldn't read on his face. "You're up," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Where were you?" His voice was calm, but something in his tone made my skin prickle. "Out with Nina, lost track of time." The lie came easily, practiced from years of small deceptions about purchases and lunch dates. "Nina." He repeated the name like he was testing it. "How is she?" "Fine. Good. You know Nina." I was talking too much, overcompensating. "I should get to bed. Early morning tomorrow." "Zephyra," I paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Yeah?" "We need to talk soon. About us. About what's happening here." My heart hammered against my ribs. Did he know? Had someone seen me at Rowan's building? What do you mean? I think you know what I mean. But he didn't say anything else, just sat there in the dark, staring at his phone. I climbed the stairs on shaking legs, took a long shower to wash away the evidence of my betrayal, and slipped into bed beside my husband. Malcolm didn't move when I settled under the covers, but I could tell from his breathing that he was awake. We lay there in silence, two strangers sharing a bed, while the weight of what I'd done pressed down on me like a stone. I told myself it was just one night, a mistake born of loneliness and neglect. It didn't have to mean anything, didn't have to change anything. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that Malcolm's phone had been glowing with more than just the time when I walked through that door. The next morning brought no relief from the tension. Malcolm was gone before I woke up, leaving only a cold coffee pot and the lingering scent of his aftershave. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Family brunch at Mom's. 11 a.m. Don't be late. Not good morning or hope you slept well, just a command disguised as information. I stared at the note, remembering Vivian Grayling's monthly family brunches with a mixture of dread and resignation. Under normal circumstances, I enjoyed these gatherings. Vivian was an excellent cook, and the whole family would crowd around her dining room table, sharing stories and catching up on each other's lives. But these weren't normal circumstances. I'd slept with her younger son less than 12 hours ago, and now I'd have to sit across from both brothers and pretend nothing had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "How did coffee go with your mystery friend? Please tell me you had fun for once." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Fun felt like too simple a word for what had happened, but how could I explain the complexity of guilt and satisfaction warring in my chest? It was complicated. Can't talk right now. Family brunch. Ugh, the in-laws. Smile and nod, sister. You don't owe them anything. If only it were that simple. I spent extra time getting ready, choosing a sundress that Malcolm used to compliment, applying makeup with more care than I'd shown in weeks. If I was going to face the Grayling family, I wanted to look composed, unaffected. The drive to Vivian and Bernard's house in Oakwood Estates took 20 minutes, giving me plenty of time to rehearse casual conversation topics and practice looking surprised when I saw Rowan. Just act normal, I told myself. One night doesn't change 8 years of family dynamics. Vivian's house was a testament to traditional values and old-fashioned hospitality. The Tudor-style home with its manicured lawn and flower boxes had always intimidated me slightly. Everything was always perfect. The furniture, the meals, the family photos arranged just so on the mantelpiece. I could hear voices and laughter from the backyard as I walked up the front path. Through the window, I glimpsed the family gathered around the patio table. Vivian, in her signature floral dress, Bernard reading something on his tablet, Malcolm's dark head bent over his phone, and Rowan gesturing animatedly as he told some story, his smile bright and easy. My stomach clenched. How was he so calm? How could he sit there laughing like nothing had happened? "Zafira." Vivian opened the front door before I could knock, pulling me into one of her firm hugs that smelled like lavender and vanilla. "You look lovely, dear. Come in. Everyone's out back." I followed her through the house, noting the way she studied my face with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Vivian had always been perceptive, able to sense family drama before it fully erupted. "How are you feeling, sweetheart? You look a bit tired." "Just haven't been sleeping well," I said, which was true enough. "Work stress, you know." She didn't sound convinced. "Well, a good meal and family time will perk you up. Bernard made his famous pancakes." The backyard was Vivian's pride and joy, with its perfectly maintained garden and spacious patio. The family looked up as we approached, a chorus of greetings mixing together. "There she is," Bernard said warmly, standing to give me a kiss on the cheek. Malcolm's father had always been kind to me, though he was a man of few words. How's work treating you? Can't complain, I replied automatically, my eyes finding Malcolm. He looked up from his phone long enough to nod at me, then returned his attention to the screen. Zeph. Rowan's voice was bright, cheerful, giving nothing away. He stood and moved toward me, and for a moment I panicked, thinking he was going to hug me, that everyone would see some sign of intimacy between us. But his embrace was perfectly appropriate, brief, brotherly, the kind of greeting he'd given me hundreds of times before. Good to see you, he said, his voice warm but not overly familiar. You look great. Thanks, I managed, hyper-aware of Malcolm's presence a few feet away. You too. If he noticed anything strange in our interaction, he didn't show it. We all settled around the table, falling into the familiar rhythm of family brunch. Vivian brought out platters of food, Bernard's pancakes, fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, bacon cooked to perfection. So, Vivian said as we filled our plates, what's everyone been up to this week? Malcolm, how's that big project going? Henderson project's behind schedule, Malcolm replied without looking up from his phone. Probably working through the weekend again. On Halloween weekend, Vivian frowned, but Ari's school party is Monday. I'll try to make it. I felt a familiar surge of irritation. You'll try. It's your daughter's Halloween party, Malcolm. She's been talking about her costume for weeks. Some things are more important than dress-up parties, Zephyra. The words hit like a slap, and I felt my cheeks burn. Around the table, the family shifted uncomfortably. Bernard cleared his throat, Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. I think Ari's pretty important, Rowan said mildly. Kids remember when their parents show up. Malcolm finally looked up from his phone, his gaze moving between his brother and me. Thanks for the parenting advice, Rowan. When you have kids, you can lecture me about priorities. Malcolm, Vivian said sharply, there's no need for that tone. Sorry. But he didn't sound sorry. He sounded tired and irritated and completely done with all of us. I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. Well, at least one of us will be there. Maybe Ari won't notice if Daddy's too busy sleeping with his laptop to show up. The joke fell flat, landing in the sudden silence like a stone. Malcolm's jaw tightened, and I saw something flash in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. That's not fair, he said quietly. Isn't it? The words came out sharper than I intended, months of resentment bubbling over. When's the last time you put your family before your work, Malcolm? When's the last time you had a conversation with your wife that wasn't about bills or schedules? Zephyra, Vivian said warningly, but I was past caring about proper brunch etiquette. No, it's fine. Let's air it all out. I turned to face Malcolm fully, aware that I was making a scene, but unable to stop myself. Your son wants to know why Daddy doesn't talk anymore. Your wife feels like a stranger in her own home. But sure, the Henderson project is definitely the priority here. Malcolm set his phone down carefully, his movements controlled. We can discuss this at home. Can we? Because lately, discussing anything with you requires scheduling an appointment through your calendar app. That's enough. His voice was low, dangerous. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself? I laughed, high and bitter. That's rich, coming from someone who's been ignoring his family for weeks. Across the table, Rowan was watching our exchange with an expression I couldn't quite read. When our eyes met, I saw something there. Sympathy, understanding, and something else that made my pulse quicken. Maybe, Rowan said carefully, you both just need some time to cool off. Marriage is hard work, but you're good together when you're not stressed. Are we? Malcolm asked, his gaze still fixed on me. I'm starting to wonder if we know each other at all anymore. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I felt exposed, like he could see straight through me to the guilt I was carrying. People change, I said quietly. Sometimes they grow apart. Sometimes they do. His voice was flat, emotionless. Sometimes they make choices that change everything. My blood turned cold. There was something in his tone, in the way he was looking at me, that suggested this wasn't just about our argument. Did he know? Had he figured it out somehow? Well, Vivian said brightly, clearly desperate to change the subject. Who wants more coffee? Bernard, why don't you tell everyone about that documentary you watched? The conversation limped along for another hour, everyone working hard to pretend the tension wasn't thick enough to cut with a knife. I caught Vivian watching me several times, her expression thoughtful and concerned. When I excused myself to use the restroom, she followed. Zafira, dear, she said as soon as we were alone in the hallway. Is everything all right? You and Malcolm seem strained. I looked at my mother-in-law, this woman who had welcomed me into her family, who had babysat Ari countless times, who had always treated me like a daughter. The urge to confess everything was overwhelming. We're going through a rough patch, I said instead. Work stress, you know. It happens to every couple. Does it? Her blue eyes were sharp, searching. Because I've been married to Bernard for 37 years, and I've never seen him look at me the way Malcolm was looking at you out there. What do you mean? Like he doesn't recognize you anymore. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Like he's seeing someone he never expected to see. My mouth went dry. Vivian, I hope I'm wrong, she said quietly. For everyone's sake, I hope I'm reading this situation incorrectly. But if I'm not, well, actions have consequences, dear, especially in families. She patted my arm gently, but her words felt like a warning. As we rejoined the family, I caught Malcolm watching our return with those same unreadable eyes. The brunch ended shortly after, everyone eager to escape the tension. As we said our goodbyes, Rowan pulled me aside. Are you okay? He asked quietly. That was pretty intense. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I felt exposed, paranoid, like everyone could see my guilt written across my face. Maybe we should talk later, after things calm down. I don't think that's a good idea. Zeph, I have to go. I pulled away from him, aware that Malcolm was waiting by our car, watching our interaction with those cold, calculating eyes. The drive home was silent except for the radio playing softly in the background. Malcolm stared out the window while I gripped the steering wheel and tried to think of something, anything, to say that might bridge the growing chasm between us. Malcolm, I finally said as we pulled into our driveway, about what happened back there. Don't. His voice was flat. Just don't. He got out of the car and walked into the house without waiting for me, leaving me sitting alone in the driveway with the engine running and the terrible certainty that everything was about to fall apart. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. How was brunch? You look upset in Rowan's Instagram story. My heart stopped. Rowan had posted about brunch. I quickly opened Instagram, scrolling to his story. There it was, a group photo of the family around the table, everyone smiling except Malcolm and me. We looked like strangers sitting next to each other, the distance between us obvious even in a casual snapshot. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the caption, "Family brunch with these amazing people. Some conversations are long overdue." What did that mean? What conversations? Another text from Nina. Also, why does Malcolm look like he wants to murder someone? Trouble in paradise? I stared at the messages, at Rowan's cryptic post, at the photo that captured the exact moment my marriage started cracking apart in public. Everything's fine, I typed back, but as I sat in my driveway watching Malcolm's silhouette move past the living room window, I knew that nothing would ever be fine again. Monday morning at Morrison & Associates started like any other day, but by lunchtime, my carefully constructed world was crumbling around me. It began with Janet from accounting, who stopped by my desk with her usual coffee and gossip routine. "Girl, you look exhausted," she said, perching on the edge of my desk. "Everything okay at home?" "Just tired," I replied, not looking up from my computer screen. "Ari had a nightmare last night." It was a lie. Ari had slept peacefully while I'd tossed and turned, replaying every moment of the weekend. Rowan's hands on my skin, Malcolm's cold stare across the brunch table, Vivian's knowing eyes in the hallway. Janet sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Well, maybe you should get some rest. Take a personal day. Spend some time with that handsome husband of yours. Something in her tone made me look up. There was a gleam in her eyes that I didn't like, a barely suppressed excitement that usually meant she'd heard something juicy. Why would you say that? Oh, no reason. Just that marriage takes work, especially when there are distractions. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about, Janet? Nothing specific. But her smile was sharp, predatory. Just that people talk, honey. And sometimes they talk about things they've seen, or heard, or photographed. The last word hit me like a physical blow. Photographed? What could she possibly... My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Cute building downtown, industrial chic, bet the rent's expensive for a gym instructor. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Someone had seen me at Rowan's apartment. Someone had been watching, taking pictures, gathering evidence. Another message. Friday night, 11:47 p.m., Saturday morning, 12:43 a.m., interesting timeline. Excuse me, I said to Janet, grabbing my phone and heading for the bathroom. My legs felt like jelly, my vision tunneling as panic set in. In the privacy of a locked stall, I scrolled through the messages. 3 photos accompanied the texts. Me entering Rowan's building, me leaving hours later, my hair mussed, and my clothes wrinkled. The timestamps were damning, the images clear enough to identify me without question. Who is this? I typed with trembling fingers. A friend. Someone who thinks your husband deserves to know what kind of wife he has. What do you want? Justice, truth, for Malcolm to see who you really are. The messages stopped coming, leaving me alone with the terrible certainty that my secret was out. Someone knew, someone was watching, and they were planning to tell Malcolm. I spent the rest of the day in a haze of terror and paranoia. Every phone call could be Malcolm confronting me. Every coworker's glance felt loaded with knowledge. When my boss asked if I was feeling well, I claimed a migraine and left early. The drive home was a nightmare of worst-case scenarios. Would Malcolm be waiting for me? Would he have already seen the photos? Would Ari be there when he confronted me, forced to witness her parents' marriage exploding in real time? But when I walked through the front door, the house was empty. A note on the kitchen counter explained Malcolm's absence. Client meeting, home late, dinner with Ari at 6. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt. I was relieved to avoid my husband. What kind of wife was I? The kind who cheated with his brother, apparently. I picked up Ari from after-school care and took her to McDonald's, letting her play in the indoor playground while I stared at my phone, waiting for more anonymous messages. None came, but that somehow made it worse. The silence felt ominous, pregnant with threat. "Mommy, why do you look sad?" Ari asked as we drove home, her Happy Meal toy clutched in her small hands. "I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking." "About Daddy?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you always look sad when you think about Daddy now." Out of the mouths of babes. My 7-year-old daughter had noticed what I'd been trying to hide from myself, that thinking about Malcolm brought me no joy anymore, only guilt and regret, and a growing sense of dread. "Grown-up stuff is complicated sometimes," I said lamely. "Emma's parents got divorced," Ari said matter-of-factly. "Now she has 2 houses and 2 Christmases. She says it's better because they don't yell anymore." My heart clenched. "Daddy and I don't yell." "No, but you don't talk either. Emma says that's worse." I had no response to that devastating observation. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, my daughter's words echoing in my head. Emma says that's worse. Not talking was worse than yelling. Silence was worse than conflict. What did that say about my marriage? Malcolm came home at 8 p.m., long after Ari was in bed. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, trying to work up the courage to confess everything before someone else told him first. "How was your day?" he asked, the question automatic, polite. "Fine." The lie tasted bitter. "Yours?" "Long." He loosened his tie, opened the refrigerator, stared at the contents without taking anything. "We need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. "About what?" "About us. About what's happening here." He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression that made my mouth go dry. "About the choices we're making." "Malcolm, I know, Zephyra." 3 words. Simple, quiet, devastating. "You know what?" "I know about Friday night. I know where you were, who you were with." His voice was calm, controlled, but I could see the pain behind his eyes. "I know about my brother." The wine glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. Red liquid spread across the tiles like blood, like guilt made visible. "How?" I whispered. "Does it matter?" He didn't move to clean up the mess, didn't flinch at the sound of breaking glass. "The question is, what do we do now?" I stared at him, this man I'd married 8 years ago, this stranger who was looking at me like I was someone he'd never seen before. "Malcolm, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How my wife decided to sleep with my brother because I was working too much. How you justified destroying our family because you felt neglected. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. Anger, hurt, betrayal, all tangled together. "Tell me, Zephyra. Make me understand how you could do this to us." I opened my mouth, searching for words that could possibly explain the loneliness, the desperation, the way Rowan had made me feel seen and wanted. But how could I make Malcolm understand when I barely understood it myself? "I was lonely," I said finally. "You've been so distant, so cold. I felt like I was disappearing in my own marriage." "So you decided to have an affair." "It wasn't an affair, it was one night. One mistake. One night with my brother." He said it like he was testing the words, trying to make them make sense. "My brother, Zephyra. Not some stranger, not some co-worker. My family." The pain in his voice was unbearable. I stood up, glass crunching under my feet, wine staining my socks. "Malcolm, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can..." "Can we?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Can we work through you betraying me with the person I trusted most in the world? Can we work through you destroying 2 relationships in one night?" "I love you," I said desperately. "I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I love our family." "Do you?" He studied my face like he was looking for evidence. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you love the idea of being the victim. Poor Zephyra, ignored by her workaholic husband. Poor Zephyra, forced to seek comfort elsewhere. That's not fair." "Fair?" His control finally cracked, voice rising. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I have to live with the image of my wife in my brother's bed? Is it fair that our daughter is going to grow up in a broken home because her mother couldn't handle a rough patch in her marriage?" "Keep your voice down. Ari's sleeping." "Ari's going to wake up to a lot worse than raised voices, thanks to your choices." The words hit like physical blows. I sank back into my chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I'd done. This wasn't just about Malcolm and me anymore. This was about Ari, about family gatherings that would never be the same, about a little girl who would have to navigate the wreckage of her parents' marriage. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Malcolm was quiet for a long moment, staring at the broken glass on the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, resolved. "Now, you pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a few days. I need time to think, and I can't do that with you here." "Malcolm, this isn't a discussion, Zephyra. This is me telling you what's going to happen. You made your choice Friday night. Now I'm making mine." I wanted to argue, to fight, to beg him to reconsider. But the look in his eyes stopped me. This was Malcolm at his most methodical, most determined. The same focus he brought to his work projects now turned toward dismantling our marriage. What about Ari? What about her? She'll stay here, in her home, with her father. You can see her when we work out a schedule. You can't keep me from my daughter. I'm not keeping you from her. I'm protecting her from the chaos you've created. He moved toward the stairs, then paused. Pack light. I don't think you'll be gone long. There was something ominous in that last statement, but before I could ask what he meant, he was gone, leaving me alone with the broken glass and the terrible certainty that my marriage was over. I called Nina from the guest bedroom while I threw clothes into a suitcase. He knows, I said as soon as she answered. Knows what? Zeph, you're scaring me. About Rowan, about Friday night. Someone saw me, took pictures. Malcolm knows everything. Oh, shit. Okay. Come here, come to my place. We'll figure this out. He wants me out of the house, away from Ari. That bastard. He can't just kick you out. You have rights. But as I zipped up my suitcase and took one last look at the bedroom I'd shared with Malcolm for 5 years, I wondered if I had any rights left at all. I'd broken the fundamental trust of marriage, betrayed not just my husband, but his entire family. Maybe I deserved whatever was coming next. My phone buzzed with one final anonymous message. Truth has a way of coming out. Sweet dreams, Zafira. I turned off the phone and drove into the night, toward Nina's apartment and an uncertain future, leaving behind the wreckage of everything I'd thought I wanted.